Deep Rock Galactic is one of the greatest co-op games ever. There's nothing quite like joining a random group of strangers, spewing sewage at bugs, and then leaving feeling like you've just spent an hour with old friends. So what happens when you take that formula, crank up the pressure, add a ton of randomness, and make players compete against each other for the best loot? Well, after about 30 hours with the roguelite spin-off Rogue Core, I can tell you it makes everything a lot more exciting, a lot more chaotic, and occasionally a lot more frustrating. And sometimes you get all free. You see, Rogue Core doesn't give everyone their own selection of upgrades. Instead, it gives the whole team a shared pool of perks, and you then take turns picking your favorite. And since most people don't have a full group of friends to play with, this has caused biblical levels of complaining among the player base. Because some evil rando can completely ruin the experience for everyone by just hoarding the best stuff. So is the system actually a disaster, a worse idea than even soggy bread? Honestly, it's actually fine. Maybe I just radiate an aura of friendliness, but I have never had a problem divvying up loot. Everyone I played with was very polite and considerate of others, which would be genuinely shocking if this was something like League of Legends. But for the Deep Rock Galactic crowd, it's just another Tuesday. But the complaints aren't entirely wrong, they're just aimed at the wrong target. Because it's not the way you divide the loot that's the problem, it's the loot itself. It is boring. Like really, really boring. Instead of cool perks that make you fly across the screen at Mach 10 like in Far Far West, Rogue Core mostly offers generic stat upgrades or buffs that activate only when Venus is in retrograde and only if you're wearing leopard print underwear. So when 4 people huddle up for upgrades, if you can actually get the bearded bastards to stand still for a moment, it's basically guaranteed that at least 2 of them will leave disappointed. Not because they were screwed over by their team, but because there's just nothing good to take. And when each level only gives you a couple of upgrades, being at the bottom of the pecking order really does feel terrible. You get to watch others bounce around and blast aliens apart like they owe them money. Meanwhile, you're stuck with a weapon so pathetic it's best used as a back scratcher. But when you do get some of the actually good perks, the game really starts to shine. I once had a build where I stacked so much fire rate and reload speed that my grenade launcher just went bleh and blew its entire load the moment I pressed the trigger. Nothing in the game could stand up to the bleh, not even the final boss. It was just an endless, glorious mess of explosions and giblets. That run took me an hour, but to me, it honestly felt like minutes. It was an absurd amount of fun to create an earthquake wherever I went, which is exactly why I'm so disappointed there's not more of these kinds of builds. Rogue Core desperately needs to ditch the small number increases and really embrace the chaos of roguelites. Who cares if it's unfair towards the aliens? They probably deserve it anyway. With all that in mind, you might expect the rest of the game to be messy as well, but no. I ran into 0 notable bugs and had no performance issues whatsoever, which for an early access launch is absolutely bonkers. As good old Todd Howard would say, it just works. And that extends to the gameplay feel. It doesn't even matter what you're firing, from the piddly pistols to the mighty minigun. Everything feels good to go shooty bang bang with. There's just something really special about standing back to back with your fellow dwarves, unloading hundreds upon hundreds of bullets in every direction as the core spawns slowly encroach upon you. And even if they break through and everything turns into a chaotic brawl, that's no problem at all, because Rogue Core has greatly improved the melee combat from DRG. Instead of having one big swing followed by sad little pokes, every dwarf can now rip and tear through hordes like the Doomslayer. And the dedicated melee builds can straight up recreate anime scenes by slicing entire hordes. But in an unfortunately recurring theme for this review, there is a catch. Not all weapons are made equal. A lot of the starter weapons are, I never want to touch this levels of terrible. Just boring pistols and SMGs that don't do nearly enough damage for the amount of enemies trying to nibble on your toes. And since the team picks weapons in sequence, much like the perks, someone is always going to get saddled with a super soaker while others get to use awesome stuff like the charge pistol, a weapon that does such an absurd amount of damage that God himself has to duck every time you pull the trigger. Now in most roguelikes, you could slowly upgrade those bad weapons into Kilgore, the Eater of Worlds. But since most upgrades are again minor stat increases, bad weapons just kind of stay bad. And the really strange thing is, DRG already solved this problem with overclocks, plus-minus style upgrades that drastically change a weapon's performance. Yet here, there's only a very small selection. I feel like adding the cream of the overclock crop into the upgrade pool would massively improve the gameplay, so Rogue Core skipping them is very weird. But Rogue Core isn't just action. Staying true to its roots, it's also about exploration and mining. Each level has upgrade stations to hunt down and heaps of expedite, a green mineral that serves as your experience. It's nothing complicated, but that's kind of the point. You need a bit of a breather between the hectic fights, so spending a minute or two slapping barrels and mining minerals is a much welcome reset. My only real issue is that the caves are simultaneously too simple, yet too complicated. Gone are the sprawling labyrinths of DRG, and instead every map is now basically a snake. On its own, that's perfectly fine, since this is an action game and you don't want people getting lost for 15 minutes. But for whatever reason, Rogue Core still likes to generate these massive vertical facilities that go either straight up to heaven or all the way down into hell. To deal with this, Rogue Core lets you select a movement tool from a randomized pool. But once again, they're not all made equal, not even close. What is a guy with platforms, drills, or a light supposed to do when loot is literally on top of the ceiling? But at the same time, the drills are the only tool that lets you make core spawn smoothies in melee combat, so it's all just a bit weird and lopsided. But on the positive side, the new gravity lift is way cooler than anything DRG has. It lifts you up quickly, reaches surprisingly far, and it prevents you from breaking every single bone in your body if you accidentally overshoot. It is the absolute gold standard for mobility, and whenever you're in a run without it, you can really feel its absence. But unlike DRG, which is a chill game through and through, Rogue Core is all about speed. From the moment you step off the elevator, you are at the mercy of the timer. Stay too long and you'll be hit by endless waves of enemies that eventually culminate in these really nasty looking worms that will straight up kidnap people if they aren't slapped across the cheeks. The worms, that is, not the people. So on higher difficulties, you actually have to haul ass and take risks, which I find to be genuinely exciting. There's something sadistically fun about agonizing over whether you have the time to go for another level up or if you're better off playing it safe. And if you decide to risk it, fighting through hell itself to reach the elevator never gets old. I have seen plenty of my teammates complain about the timer, but honestly, I think it works really well for a game like Rogue Core. Runs already take a full hour, so having something to discourage people from slowly grazing across the caves until nothing but dirt remains is definitely a very good thing. But the timer does expose a more serious problem, a lack of mission variety. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a casual stroll through the caves at depth 1, or a nightmarish struggle uphill both ways at depth 4, the missions are always exactly the same. You walk down the snaky map collecting loot, defend an elevator, and then repeat. And since you'll be doing this up to 5 times before the big bad boss, it really gets repetitive very, very quickly. And again, I'm not sure why this is the case. DRG has a whole roster of very varied and very interesting mission types sitting right there. We could have skated along pipes, reactivated old drop pods, just anything to break up the rhythm. As it stands, the levels just kind of turn into a blur. But on the subject of variety, the core spawn as enemies are great. They're a diverse faction where every single type of transdimensional horror is fun to fight. They crawl across walls like xenomorphs, they jump around constantly so you cannot just camp a choke point, and they all have obvious weaknesses and counters that makes even massive hordes feel fair to deal with. So as far as new factions go, they do a great job of filling that glyphid-shaped hole in my heart. Which then does raise the obvious question: why aren't there any levels where we fight the bugs? They are a fully fledged faction with battle-tested gameplay. They would add heaps of variety for basically zero effort. And don't give me the lore excuse. This is a game where a dwarf can travel back through time exclusively to throw 50 grenades in a row, most of it at their teammates. We are already operating on full moon logic here, so as far as I'm concerned, adding glyphids would be pure upside. As for the final bosses, there is currently 3 of them, and all of them are great. They have enough health that you actually get to enjoy how broken your build is, but they also throw in small obstacle courses to mix up the fight and force you to use your full toolkit. They are basically the perfect kind of boss for a game like Rogue Core. Rogue Core has also added something with a ton of potential: a brand new class system. There's currently 5 of them, each with 3 unique abilities and special upgrades you can find mid-mission. The Slicer, for example, can do an air dash or an anime swoosh straight through a horde of enemies, and it is exactly as fun as it sounds. But my personal favorite is the Retcon, the previously mentioned time-traveling dwarf. Her shtick is that she can save her position and stats, go absolutely hog wild on the enemy, blowing through her entire supply and suffering horrific burns in the process, and then just zip right back to before any of it actually happened. There's so many cool things you can do with that ability that I simply cannot stop playing her. Also, the more observant among you probably noticed I said her. Rogue Core now has female dwarves. But not any fancy pants elf-loving ladies. No. These are proper dwarf women with beards that can reach their knees. All of it is purely cosmetic, but it is a great addition, which makes it genuinely baffling that the classes are gender-locked. 3 are male and 2 are female. You can change literally everything else about your dwarf, from the length of their mustache to what kind of vomit-colored monstrosity you want to be like. But apparently gender is just a step too far. It's always the exact same pattern with Rogue Core, over and over again. It has awesome ideas, but then I guess the rival corporation sabotages them right at the finish line. And since this is a roguelite, there is naturally a set of upgrades you can grab to make yourself stronger between missions. It's a cool idea, but this is quite obviously the most early access part of the game. By which I mean, a lot of it feels very placeholder. Every upgrade is a stat bonus, and they range from completely inconsequential to good lord this is broken. The end result is that most of the builds end up looking exactly the same, because why would you take fall damage resistance or throwing strength when you can instead get plus 50% weak point damage? You would have to have a weak point in your head to pass that up. So yeah, it's obviously not done. so I won't harp on it too much. I'll just say that much like the perks, here's to hoping we get much more interesting stuff in the future. As for right now, Roguecore has brought with it DRG's promotion system, and it's honestly kind of wonderful. Once you hit level 15, you'll be able to promote a class which gives you access to new cosmetics and lets you mix and match class decks to at least slightly fine-tune your own build. But it's the visuals and music that make me want to go back on that pedestal. It all combines to create this atmosphere of grandeur that makes you feel like you're a part of something truly epic, and not just a corporate drone that paid money to have a machine ruin their pickaxe. Roguecore, much like DRG, just looks great. It's a simple style that cannot really compete with AAA games in terms of sheer graphical fidelity, but honestly, who cares if you cannot see your character's butt sweat in perfect detail? Roguecore has atmosphere and charm, and that's the sort of thing that'll stick with you a lot longer than pretty textures. Also, I am pretty sure the game is powered by pure black magic, because somehow it is under 4 GB in size, which is just crazy even for a roguelite. And the same goes for the music. It's also under 4 GB in size. No, but seriously, it's all quiet and ambient synths while you're exploring. But as soon as the bullets start flying, so does the soundtrack. It's not something I'll listen to in my free time, but for a bunch of dwarves about to die in some hole in the far reaches of space, it is pretty much perfect. Which brings us to the most important question. Would I recommend Roguecore? Not yet. The game has a lot of potential, and I had loads of fun playing it, but everywhere you look, there are cracks, either because someone mined there or because an idea just wasn't fully developed. It is a fascinating and frustrating experience in equal measure. So if you're willing to embrace the jank, then by all means, give it a bash. But if you have even one toe on the fence, I would advise keeping your wallet closed for the time being, at least until they fix the perks, because that right there feels like the very core of Roguecore's problems. And finally, it is worth remembering that Deep Rock Galactic did not start off as the masterpiece it is today. The very first version was bare bones and wonky, just like Roguecore, so don't write the game off just yet. It has the potential to become something truly, truly special. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing, as that really does help me out a lot, and I'll hopefully see you again soon. Rock and Stone.